Demby, and welcome to all for our second Intereach webinar for our second year of presenting these. Thanks to all of you who registered. It will give us a chance to get feedback from you about how to tailor these webinars to need as much as we can in the future. I also want you to keep listening as at the end of the webinar, my co-chair, Amanda McMillan, will announce the next webinar in our series. Today, our webinar is Team Science Education and Training. It is being presented by Sawsan Khuri. Sawsan Khuri, PhD, is an Honorary Senior Lecturer at the University of Exeter Medical School in the UK, where she is a member of the genomics faculty team. She also works as a freelancer to develop materials and strategies for education in both computational science and team science. Today's webinar will focus on how different institutions provide team science training to their research communities and compare approaches taken in the US and the UK. The presentation will include a summary of the types of curricular and methodological resources available for those wishing to establish team science training at their own institutions. It is clear that a website that houses everything in one user-friendly place is needed, and that this community needs a forum for discussion and open exchanges of experiences. The Team Science Toolkit and the Team Science Educators group on LinkedIn could be used to help with this, and the discussion today will engage participants in how we might proceed to fulfill these needs. It's my honor to present Sawsan.
Thank you very much, Karen. Hello, everyone. Am I heard? Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Yep. Okay, cool. So I was delighted to be asked to present this, and I kind of feel that I should really start by kind of explaining who I am. I've had a brief look at the list of participants and the 8 so far, and I'm not sure I've met very many of them. So I know I've met a couple, but they haven't logged in yet. And I know I've met Christine, but that's about it. So I thought I'd say a few words about who I am and kind of why I can talk about this kind of stuff. Okay, hang on. I'm trying to figure out how this is going to work. Here we are. Right. So in terms of disciplinary work in my kind of academic journey, let's put it that way, I've definitely crossed several disciplinary boundaries. I started out in agricultural science. I did some work in conservation, working with environmental agencies and stuff. And then I moved into the medical sciences and began in genetics and genomics. I went into bioinformatics via some years in the lab. I then went and collaborated with engineering colleagues and became a faculty in a computer science department. At that time, I became fascinated with communication and visualization, data visualization, and I did a bunch of collaborations there as well. So I kind of feel that I've really not really done everything, no, not at all, but I have definitely got a breadth of disciplinary experience behind me in a variety of different fields. In terms of geography, I've also crossed boundaries. So I'm Lebanese, and then my family emigrated to the UK. I then lived in Hawaii, which isn't even on this map, for a few years. Then Miami, then we went to Abu Dhabi for a couple of years, then back to Miami, and now I'm in the UK again. So again, in terms of geography and cultural disciplinary boundaries are about as complex as cultural boundaries, and in terms of being able to work across teams, across disciplines in a lot of these different cases, this is basically why I think I can talk about team science education and training. Most recently, last summer, I did hopefully a final move for at least a very, very long time indeed, and that is from Miami to Exeter. I was at the University of Miami for almost 15 years, off and on. And now, as Karen said, I'm affiliated with the University of Exeter, and I'm also a freelance consultant. So that's full disclosure, and that's who I am. So what are we talking about? I'm very big on definitions. I like to know what I'm talking about. I like to know that other people are clear about what I'm talking about and how we kind of move forward in a conversation. basically needs a common vocabulary. So when I moved back here about, as I say, a year ago, I remembered that the UK and the US are two countries separated by a common language. Whereas in the US, you talk about 3-credit courses as being full semester courses worth 1/10 of the credits for that year, whether undergraduate or postgraduate levels. In the UK, it's 10 credits for is equivalent to the 3-credit courses in the US, and they're not called courses; they're called modules. Here, courses are short things that happen over like 2 or 3 hours, or maybe you have a course of 3 workshops or that type of thing. So it really is all quite different. In this talk, given who the audience is, I'll be trying to remember to use US terminology for most of it. So I'll be using courses as meaning 3 credits for the purposes of this talk. Also, when the US uses the terms workshops and seminars, that's almost the same here, except here workshops, usually everybody understands them to be 2 hours. Seminars are 1 hour, 1 hour slots kind of that repeat over a period of weeks, etc. The term team science is very well understood in the US academic community, particularly the health sciences. In the UK, it's beginning to seep in, but it's not really used as much yet. Here, people talk a lot about transferable skills, and I'll mention those in a minute as well. In the US, when a person says transdisciplinary, they are talking about the merging of disciplines. A transdisciplinary discipline is something that has encompassed 2 or 3 disciplines that have merged very, very well into one. In the UK, transdisciplinary is when you have academic, non-academic engagement. And here that's also known as impact. So it's quite a different usage of the word transdisciplinary, which is why in this talk I'll be using words like cross-disciplinary a lot more, because this kind of involves this merging of disciplines or working in an interdisciplinary or a multidisciplinary manner that is a vocabulary that both countries use quite comfortably, and that mean the same thing in both places. So hopefully that's so far so good. And do please wave or raise your hand or whatever works on Zoom to let me know if I need to clarify anything as we go through. And because of my complete obsession with definitions, Stefan Wukti, my colleague at the University of Miami, and I set up the Team Science Glossary at Gabrielle Bama's I2 Insights blog some months ago. And we now have completely realized that we definitely need to update it, not just with updates of what things mean, but provide different definitions for what things mean because of this, for example, the transdisciplinarity. Here it means one thing, there it means something else. In Germany, it meant something slightly different again. And I'd love to be able to supply each of these definitions within this glossary. And I urge everybody to please go in there. It's very accessible, i2insights.org. I'm sure you all already know it. And have your say. Tell us what you think and what we should improve and how we should, which definitions have we misrepresented or not represented, or let us know what you think we should be adding to this. This can be an extremely useful resource for everybody coming into training people in team science, and we want to make it as widely accessible as possible in terms of the definitions that we're providing. So we do need everybody's input, please. Right, so what am I talking about when I say team science? It's a group of scientists working collaboratively to solve a problem. There can be small groups, or they can be large groups, or they can be multiplex groups, but basically this is any group of scientists who are working collaboratively together. And I'll be using basically the Science of Team Science Communities continuum of collaboration when I talk about cross-disciplinarity or transdisciplinary collaborations. And that is where it starts with unidisciplinary, as in one discipline, a group of scientists working in one discipline. Multidisciplinary being a group of scientists working across 2 different disciplines, but multidisciplinary means they're working in parallel or in sequence. So they each collaborator has their own bit and they're doing their bit and it all comes in together at the end. Where you have interdisciplinary, it's a little bit more integrated, and they're working together, maybe in the same laboratory or across the same corridor or across a continent, but in a more integrated setting where they're borrowing ideas from each other and implementing each other's approaches in each other's research. And then, of course, transdisciplinary in this setting is when two separate fields have merged into one, as in the case, for example, of bioinformatics, where you have computer science, engineering, etc., merging with genomics and other health sciences. The Science of Team Science community was established some years ago to talk about how do scientists organize, communicate, conduct their research, and by the way, how can they do it better? Now that we've understood how scientists are, how can they work better together? And I'm not going to go into all of what the Science of Team Science community has found, because it's huge, it's large, it's invigorating, it's wonderful. But the bit that interests me most is the training part. They discovered in the Science of Team Science community, again and again reiterates, that training scientists and how to work within teams is part of the answer of how can they do it better. Definitely we need to be training our scientists in how to do teamwork. And I'd argue not just scientists, but that's for a different discussion. So I began to explore team science training. What does this mean? How can we implement this? The very first time I delivered this, I layered team science material, and I borrowed a lot from the business school. I went to business school curriculum where they teach about teams and teamwork and team dynamics and all that. And I borrowed a lot of their approaches. I further developed them or kind of made them suitable to be delivered as part of a scientific community. So I slightly changed the business focus of the material and made it more science focused. And I layered it as part of a bioinformatics course that I was teaching in 2012 at the University of Miami. This was a biology computer science cross-listed course. So already I had a mix of students in there. And I layered the team science component as part of the bioinformatics, so that at the end of the course, they not only learned bioinformatics, but they also learned how to work in teams. And of course, there was a graded project and all the good things there. I talked about this in a poster at the SciTS conference in 2013 and had a lot of wonderful feedback. I used a lot of that feedback and the experience I had to actually develop curriculum for a full semester 3-credit course in team science, again at the University of Miami. I delivered that 2 years in a row, and of course then I left. But again, the feedback from that was absolutely wonderful, and this is what you can find on the Team Science Toolkit blog. The whole curriculum is available for you to look at, and again, I'll be referring to that a couple of times later on. I also kind of condensed the material into a core competencies that Stefan and I worked on, and I presented that at the SciTS meeting in 2015. I'll talk about my core competencies in a second. And then, of course, there's workshops and seminar series and all those good stuff. I did that at the University of Miami in 2015, 2016, and I have already been asked if I could please do that at the University of Exeter in 2018, coming up in January. And yes, of course, I'm going to be doing that as well. So that's the continuum of workshops and seminar series. These are basically the core competencies in team science that Stefan and I focused on. The question we asked was, what would we like our science students to know about teamwork in order for them to go out into the scientific / academic / cross-disciplinary community and work effectively, collaborate effectively within different teams, different disciplines, different professions. And we decided that understanding team dynamics was really core and really important for them, because they can walk into a team and not really appreciate some of the dynamics that basically have to happen in order for that team to grow. And so the very first thing we focused on was team dynamics. How does a team come together? What are the 4 or 5 different stages of team building progress, progression and how you deal with all the different changeovers of these different phases of team dynamics. The second thing was know thyself, know thy people. So basically know your strengths and weaknesses with respect to everybody else around the table. Know what you want out of this group, as well as what everybody else wants out of that group. Only by understanding who the others are and what they want to get out of it, will you be able to then offer what you can to help the group and understand why other people might be reluctant to offer what they're offering. So a lot of conflict and a lot of misunderstanding can be completely annihilated by understanding what you bring to the table, what other people are willing to bring to the table, and exactly what the project is that everybody's trying to solve. So knowing a lot about these people skills basically is very important. Building trust comes from that. So as you're getting to know yourself and your people, you're building trust as you go along, because you're saying, well, don't worry, I'm not going to step on your toes. This is what I bring. That's what you bring. No problem. We can work together. Oh, are we doing the same thing? Okay, well, what if I shift it this way and you shift yours that way? And so, you know, there are ways of working with people to build further trust in things. Giving due credit is huge, because in academia, as we all know, it's very often that you think you should be a co-author and all of a sudden you find yourself in the acknowledgement. Hasn't that happened to me? I was an equal effort second author on a paper, and by the time it got published, I found myself in the sixth. Sixth in the middle. I'm like, how did that happen? The last time we met, I was supposed to be second co-author. But never mind, these things happen. And again, giving due credit is a very big deal. And we all have examples of that, I'm sure. Recognition and resolution of conflict feeds very happily after all this. Most of the conflict happens because of credit, because of mistrust, because of lack of resources. And again, those things can be mitigated if they're taught to how to mitigate these types of conflicts in a scientific team. Defining member roles, again, who's doing what, and who's taking leadership of which bit. We don't have to have a leader for the whole thing, although it's usually useful, but who is taking leadership for which bit of the program or the project is usually a good one to talk about and discuss ahead of time. Again, cultural significance, and here I'll bring back my hint at the beginning of, this is not just ethnic cultures that we're describing, it's also disciplinary cultures. Because again, talking to an engineer and an MD, they have different approaches to how they conduct their work. They might both be completely ethical, honest, integrity, beautiful, wonderful, deep human beings. But the way they approach their topics and the way they ask questions from their experiments is different. And that has to be taken into account when you bring everybody into the same, on the same table to work on a project together, for example. And it doesn't have to be something as disparate as an engineer and a medic. It could also be somebody with a nursing background and somebody that is an administrator working with insurance, payroll, or something like that. That is also cultural differences in how they approach their work, and that has to be taken into account on the table. And then, of course, once you've done all that, in terms of core competencies, there needs to be an activity that assesses the collaborative potential of the group. This is sometimes called collaboration readiness by some people, and we could have used that phrase here, but I like the word potential, so I kept it in there. But basically, we're talking about, well, how ready are these individuals to embark on a collaboration. Here also, of course, we know that it's not just the individual readiness that is important, but institutional readiness and organizational readiness and all the rest of that. But in this case here, we're talking about core competencies for what can we deliver to our students to make them better at collaborating. In that sense, here it's more to do with the individual collaborative potential. How am I doing? I can't see anybody's feedback, so I'm usually used to talking to an audience with faces smiling at me. So.
You're doing great. Do you mind taking a question right now, or?
Yeah, please. Yes, this is a good time to stop for a question.
This is Matt. So I was just looking at your core competencies list, and my question was, is this an order, sort of an order of operations thing, or is it just so happen to be ordered in this order?
So numbers 1 to 5 feed off each other and are usually best provided in that order.
Okay.
Number 6 can sometimes be folded into number 2. It depends on who the group is that you're teaching, in my experience.
Got it.
And equally for number 7. They are distinct, but they can be folded into number 2 if that's the way the group kind of seems to be.
So I guess my question was then about number 2. Why isn't that number 1?
Because before they understand how to think of themselves as part of a team, they have to know what the team does.
Okay.
We've thought about this very carefully, and that's a great question, Matt. We felt that when I delivered in 2014 the material with Know Thyself First, the students were coming back with, their hobbies and how much they love their families or their boyfriends or that type of thing. Whereas when we took team dynamics first, their knowledge of themselves became more to do with leadership, collaboration, cooperation, resourcefulness, that type of stuff. And that is the thing you want to bring out.
Okay, so you're really just framing what part of Know Thyself is.
Yeah,
Okay.
Exactly.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Anyone else? Right, so I'll move on. So in terms of then who's doing what, and I've already described what I've done, so so this is what other people are doing. I did a survey. I don't know how many of you saw the multiple emails asking for feedback and for you to fill out my survey. But I did it in 2 ways. I sent it out during the SciTS meeting as a kind of a set of questions that I was asking people to email me back responses for. And I did get a bunch of replies. Thank you all very much for that. And people's flyers and a couple of curriculums and things like that. And it was wonderful. But it wasn't enough. And I sent it out then as a SurveyMonkey survey, and I got a lot more responses that way. This is the summary of these responses. So, yeah, it's true. Most people are offering workshops. Very few people are offering courses. Forgive me for putting modules there, but again, I was delivering this to a UK European audience not long ago. So that stayed as modules. But what that means is to an American audience, this is 3 credit courses. And other is basically blogs, books, online learning tools, and all the sort of thing that doesn't fit neatly into a workshop or a seminar or a course or a retreat. That's basically what it is. Then we have who was this delivered to, and you will notice by the numbers of the percentage out of 70, the fact that a lot of people offer, for example, their workshop to clinical staff and research staff and postgrads and faculty. So this group tends to all be treated as if it's one, or at least staff and clinical staff and faculty. Some people, however, include undergrads. Some people include postgrads. And almost everybody is targeting faculty. There are some, the retreat in particular was targeted purely at faculty. And that's why here you have a much bigger percentage for people targeting faculty with their teaching of team science. My own personal opinion is that that's almost too late, unless they're very junior faculty who are just starting out, and you can still influence how they think. Most senior faculty think they already know this stuff. Even if you offer them CMEs, in my experience, they turn up, but they don't switch on. And I am all about trying to target everybody while they're still here, before they get up there. And you'll find that they're much more receptive. They want to learn this stuff. They're keen, and it's a lot easier and more long term, more effective in the longer term, if we start here with these groups. And this is a measure of how many people are these things reaching. So most workshops are aimed at between 10 and 30 participants. I cap my efforts at 24, basically. I felt that was a nice number to have in a room. The ones that are over 100 are the blogs and the books. Obviously, they're reaching out to the multitudes out there. And a few efforts were really targeting smaller groups. But usually this seems to be the right number for most people. What are they offering? The curriculum that these workshops are dealing with vary. So there's an understanding of needs. So this is the know thyself and know thy people and know the project type of stuff. There's some role play, team building exercises that people offer. A lot of focus on communication strategies, quite clearly. And then some very specific conflict resolution tools. These are the conflicts you might face, and here are some tools that you might find useful in mitigating them. So those are the topics that are generally being offered out there. A lot of team building and communication. These two take up most of the focus. They take the form of a journal club that maybe takes place once a week or once every 2 weeks. There are didactic guest lectures. So some of these workshops happen once a year, and it's a half-day workshop once a year. These are mostly guest lectures. There may be a little bit of an interactive activity that's incorporated at some point, but not usually, from what I could gather. And some are pure activity-based workshops that, the normal type of business school type workshops that people enjoy and get a lot out of it. Which is very good, but we don't see very many of them that are not proprietary. That there are 2 or 3 groups that basically travel the country providing these workshops, and they're fantastically excellent, but people have to pay for them, and so you don't find them taking off as much as they might have done if they were freely available or more accessible to more people. They do mostly seem to be run at medical schools. I have a feeling that might be a bias from the SciTS community itself that I canvassed. Also the fact that the CTSAs now require team science to be part of the renewal system, etc., and so on. A lot of them are run by professional development groups within universities rather than by faculty or education departments. And there seems to be a lot of institution-specific content, which is fine, because if you're wanting to collaborate as part of an institution and that institution has a particular, let's say, online platform that its people can use, then that makes sense for it to happen that way around, etc. But there doesn't seem to be a great deal of there doesn't seem to be there are a few, but not very many, very much content that is not institution specific at this point. So that's where that's at. And again, I think that's a reflection of who was canvassed and where the funding was coming from, really and truly. And so at the moment, there is more, and I'll be talking about more resources later, but at the moment, a lot of this is, a lot of the content that I'm talking about and where you find these resources that talk about the material that they covered and what they're doing, these can be found in the Team Science Toolkit. Of course, if you go to my blog, on the Team Science Toolkit, I'm rather delighted that what the NIH has done, or what the Team Science Toolkit people have done, is they've provided the toolkit resources for training in team science underneath my blog. So if you go to my blog and you kind of scroll down, and what I might do is I might just show you how that is. Oops, no, yeah, this is it. So this is my blog. And if you kind of scroll down, you can see the core competencies right there. You can see what we did and how we structured and blah, blah. Everything is here for you. And right here, you can find toolkit resources for training in team science. Some of these are curriculum. Some of these are an announcement for something taking place right there and then. That may be old. I mean, for example, this I think happened some years ago. But anyway, some of it might be useful to you. So this is where it all is. Let's see. And then, of course, there's Mendeley and Holly's Science of Team Science group on Mendeley, which is a forum to promote cross-disciplinary and interprofessional knowledge transfer about team science, or around team science, sorry, scientific collaboration in the science of team science research. this is a really, really cool thing that I don't think we're using enough. And I was reminded of it, just to my shame, I was reminded of it just a few days ago, and I should have not forgotten. So I think we can come back to this when we're discussing these things and see how best we can use it and for this. So then I moved to the UK, and I know that most of you are in the US, so I won't dwell very much on here, but transferable skills became a very big deal quite early on, and the government decreed that postgraduate students should get at least 2 weeks training per year in transferable skills. Now, what's included in transferable skills are writing skills and all sorts of things that are not necessarily team science focused. And in 2010, but I mean, this was happening throughout between 2002 and 2010. This group, vt.ac.uk. Now, if you put vt.com, you get someone else. So make sure you put .ac.uk if you want to get this. They got a researcher development framework together, and they have these different domains. And domain A is knowledge and intellectual abilities, knowledge base, cognitive abilities, and creativity. Domain B was personal effectiveness, how you manage yourself, how you manage your time, professional and career development stuff. Domain C was research management, again, finance, funding of research and that type of stuff. And the team science aspect really basically only fits into working with others, D1, that's it there. So it's a small aspect. And what a lot of universities do is they have basically workshop type things or short courses that are focused on one or other of these research and development framework domains. And the students are required to choose, let's say, 2 or 3 per term or something like that. And so a student could very well fulfill that requirement without ever taking anything to do with working with others, because they can take knowledge, they can take writing, self-management, they can take, all sorts of other things without ever really doing anything to do with team science. So although it's there, I'm not convinced that it's capturing the amount of people that it should be capturing. A lot of people are doing impact at the moment, and that somehow touches on some of the skills needed for team science, but not quite. And so I sampled 24 universities randomly, some the equivalent of Ivy Leagues and some the equivalent of Tier 1 and some, across the whole board of UK universities. It was a true random sampling. And I found that 5 universities are offering full courses to science students. One was offering a postgraduate certification in transferable skills. So TS here is transferable skills. And 75% have courses that link to vt.ac.uk with a lot of focus on writing and presentation skills. And there's usually one teamwork or leadership or team management course offered, but as 1 out of 30 that the students can choose from, basically. Now, having said that, the Academy of Medical Sciences in the UK has recently launched their team science if you like, initiative. And they wrote a report in March 2016. You can freely download it. So if you Google to Academy of Medical Sciences and you put in team science in their search, you get basically this. And you can download the report. And here they talk about how they need to be training everybody in team science and how they, how this is important, how individual researchers are reluctant because of reward and recognition, promotion and tenure, all the usual stuff that the science of team science community has been talking about for a long time. And so here it's, as I say, it's just beginning to happen. They identified 2 places in the UK, the Sanger Institute, of course, because the Wellcome Trust and Sanger Institute are always frontline in everything that they do with this kind of stuff. It's an amazing institution. And the National Institute for Health Research, funded by the NHS, they are now providing some type of, team management, leadership type of courses or workshops to do with team science. But again, not really the whole core competencies that we're talking about, just kind of portions of it as they go along. But still, that's really only, one report, very important organization, but only just beginning with it only being published a year ago. and the Sanger Institute and NIHR are providing something, but again, they're two institutions in a whole country of things. Now, Team Science platforms, of course, the Team Science Toolkit and Mendeley is available to everybody worldwide. So is the American Association for the Advancement of Sciences, Trellis, which was launched a few years ago at a SciTS committee, or it was very near to one of the SciTS conferences, I think. And these are available platforms for us to basically use for talking about team science and discussing educational forums and all the rest of it. Of course, there's also I2 Insights run by Gabrielle, which is wonderful. And you know, every time I think, oh, I must go back and read about that blog that came out last week, and before I know it, there's 3 other blogs I should read that have come up. So it's really a very dynamic, wonderful resource for us to find information about this. And my little group, with its 35 members, I don't really know why I've only got 35. I was expecting more, I must admit, but I know that LinkedIn isn't everybody's cup of tea, and maybe that's the problem. But I'd love to be discussing that in the next few minutes. I'm nearly wrapping up the actual talk. So where can we go from here? Provide definitions and make them context driven. And by context, I am talking about, you know, when we use the term transdisciplinary, who are we talking to? When we use the word interdisciplinary, what do we mean? This needs to be a co-created resource that everybody feeds into in order for it to be used by everybody. So again, I can't emphasize enough how much I'd love your feedback into this. What skills does a scientist need in order to collaborate successfully? So that's how we came up with our core competencies. And again, if you'd like to tweak them, make them better, you know, let's talk about it. I would like for these core competencies to have a bigger relevance and bigger exposure, so we can chat about how that might work out. Or if you find that you can't deliver all of them, which of them will work better in your circumstance? I'd love to chat about that. What is the best method for delivering this material? So having done it in a number of ways, I think layering worked very well within a discipline-specific course. The full semester course in Team Science was a bit too much. I don't think I'll do that again. I don't think it was needed. Workshops, I think, are the way to go. And whether it's like my colleague in Ohio does, whether it's a series of 3 or 4 workshops, or whether it's just one workshop, you know, I'm not sure. Again, different communities would require different things, but we do need to make them mandatory. We do need to let these students know that this is crucial, that this is absolutely mandatory. I'm preaching to the choir, so I'll stop. But really and truly, I don't know why we keep skirting around the issue. And so where can we go from here? Continued, I think we should be creating a community of training personnel to share information and experience, like us here. And again, I try to do that with a LinkedIn group, so we should be making more use of that, and I should be posting more often on that, perhaps, and gauging people's reactions. Would you comment if I raised a question? Would you comment on a LinkedIn group? Would you share a resource? Would you talk about what you've done? That's kind of what we need to know. Making the resource easily accessible. So where should we put everything? Is the Team Science Toolkit the best place to put everything? Because people kindly sent me a lot of information. I've got a folder full of about 8 or 9 things which would be very useful to people. Curricula, the journal club's list of things to share, Karen Campbell's list of four workshops that tie in beautifully together. Where shall we put all this? Again, Karen and I have a plan, but I would like to hear what you're talking about first before I tell you about our cunning plan. And I really want to hear what people think about lobbying for this to be embedded into science education. Again, I really think this should be mandatory for all science students, and not just science students really, but everybody who wishes to collaborate when they grow up, as it were. And so how do we build a team science training community? We talk to each other, we make material available, and I've left the rest blank for your input. Thank you for listening so far. I'm done.
Well, thank you so much, Sawsan. This is Christine. I am just so excited to see how much you've already pulled together and what you've done, and just even how you are so community-based in the way you present it here, looking for input. I think we could have a whole other seminar just asking you questions about this stuff, but right now, I guess you kind of ended on some things that are what would be the most helpful for you in kind of capitalizing on momentum and moving this forward. I guess we could ask everybody to ask you questions, but also just wanted to throw it out that you could use this time by telling us what is the most useful insight toward your momentum that we could provide as a audience here. For instance, like LinkedIn, I don't know what's wrong with my LinkedIn, but I don't receive invitations to groups. So I wonder if maybe people didn't get that because I went and looked for it after you and I talked. And so maybe it got buried and other people are LinkedIn newbies like me, I guess. But I think, for example, to your question there, that for people who do use it, it's the main way that they network professionally. So it's a great idea to have that group. Anyway, I just wanted to speak up and thank you so much for all these resources, and all the data you've already gathered are extremely helpful for us as we try to make our field a recognized field.
Good. I'll be writing it up and presenting it. You know, I'm not sure whether to put it on a blog or to actually try and publish it as a paper, but I'm delighted that this is useful. This is and the thing that really is missing from all of this in terms of the momentum, as you called it, is people's input. I mean, I need people to go into the glossary and tell us what you think and what else should we be putting on here. So there's a format it's a blog, so you go to the bottom and you leave a reply, you enter your comment there. It's free, it's easy, please do it. And I, you know, it's been fantastic because there's Dan Stokols, you know, one of the fathers of the field. There's Kirsten, I'm not sure what her last name is. But this is collaborative agenda setting and team writing. This is really cool. There's Gabrielle. If everyone adds or revises just one definition, we'd be done in no time. Come on, people. Right? And then there's Holly also had wonderful things to say that are going to be very useful in our second edition of this. And then there's somebody at the end who kind of said some science discovers ontology, not glossary. Well, you know, if that's how you feel, you're welcome to talk to us as well, of course. We need to hear everybody's opinion. I don't agree that science discovers only ontology, because science discovers many things. And I usually answer, you know, I usually kind of feedback. There's Caroline Wagner, another great in the field. So in terms of momentum, this is the first thing that at the moment I really am urging people to contribute to. I'd love to hear from you on the glossary. Which of these words do you agree with, disagree with? Which words do you think we've forgotten? Which words do you think we've under-defined, over-defined? You know, what else should we have on there? I think this is an important one to work on right now. And then the second thing is, as you say, LinkedIn. I mean, if it's going to be difficult to get people to post on LinkedIn, should I open a Facebook group? I mean, it's easy enough to chat on Facebook. Facebook in the one pending member. How cool is that? Look how easy it is for me to then accept members.
That's me.
Hello, Matt. So I'll accept you online. Approve immediately. There you
awesome.
go.
I'm so excited to be approved.
36.
So there are ways where you can that may solve your problem. It does make your life more complicated, but you were talking about Facebook and LinkedIn, but there are tools out there that allow you to just cross post. So if you post something on LinkedIn, it'll just post it on to Facebook. So you don't necessarily have to, I mean, you'll have to maintain both, but if somebody's preference was one or the other, it'll just feed in. So you just you post something on LinkedIn, it's going to go boom and just pop onto Facebook.
Yes, except that in order to do that, you have to link your things, and you have to. There's something called the oath. I can't remember what it's. I can't remember the actual. I can't remember what the acronym stands for, but it's basically to do with sharing information between LinkedIn and Facebook. Then you're suddenly making everything available to the powers that be, the big brother up there, and there's some issues.
That sounds like a bad teen movie.
Yeah, no, but I work in the science department, so I would rather. I think. So I actually am one of those sad people that copies and pastes into Facebook, into Twitter. So almost everything I do, if you go into my Twitter, you'll find an announcement for today's webinar. If you go into Facebook, you'll see the same, and then also on LinkedIn. I don't mind cross-posting in that way. Okay. What I'm after is for people to actually converse with me about this. And for that, we can't have, I can't have multiple platforms. In order for you and me and the 9 people here, or the 19 that signed up, to have a conversation and share resources and information and what worked here and what didn't work there, we need to be in one place, I think.
But I agree. It's just it's the attention thing. It's like trying to figure out. I think most people are in. I'm getting too far in the weeds here, but a lot of people are in Facebook all the time, and the people that I know aren't in LinkedIn all the time. But maybe that's not the case for everyone.
Oh, but this is it. So maybe this should be a Facebook group, and I have no problem. I am quite happy to set up a Team Science Educators Facebook group. I really don't mind. I was hoping that there will be 19 people here today that can actually tell me what you guys would prefer, because I need these conversations. So I'm happy. Yeah, I can set up a Facebook group, no problem, and move this. I'll tell you something. I can't see I can't see if who everybody is yet. I mean, I know where to look for it, but one of the members of our LinkedIn group, and I'm quite chuffed about this, so I'm going to figure out how to move this so that I can find this again. One of the members in my LinkedIn group, in our LinkedIn group, is the head of education at LinkedIn.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, quite. So I was really quite happy with his input. He was trying to help us have more exposure, etc. He's not sure how to help. I don't know if the fact that there's only 36 members made him walk away. But he's a member of this group, and I'm trying to grab his attention for long enough to get me some FaceTime with him, to say to him, okay, the reason why I'm not getting more people is this. Now we have now we know that people like Christine can't even get into LinkedIn. So what's that all about? And Cara Hall also had a problem. Cara Hall can't find my Team Science Educators. She searches for it and it doesn't come up. So why? I don't know. And so I'm asking him these questions and I'm trying to get him to answer. But quite honestly, if we have to move this out of LinkedIn, maybe that'll kind of help him figure it out for us. I don't know.
So, Sawsan, this is Karen.
Hello, Karen.
Sawsan, this is Karen. I'm wondering if, for us, in a different way at the Trax Institute, we often have to just really advertise. We have to send people information again and again and again, and then they go, oh yeah. So I'm thinking maybe more advertisement of this, and we could even invite people using the Intereach listserv to say this exists. But maybe if people just heard about the LinkedIn group from more areas. I mean, even if you went to Facebook and somehow announced it so that more people would know about it,
Sure.
and it might be helpful.
That's a great idea. Yeah. I'll send you the blurb that I did, or I'll rewrite it for when I set it up, and I sent it on the SciTS listserv. And yeah, absolutely. That's a great idea to kind of relaunch it and put some power behind it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't think it hurts to relaunch it on the site's listserv either. But we'll be happy to certainly send it out again.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I'll write something up and I'll send it to you and to the SciTS listserv and relaunch. That's a great idea. Yeah, because we need conversations. You know, sometimes people can comment. I mean, this can be quite a powerful thing. I know Anthony Hood uses LinkedIn quite effectively. He's always posting things and commenting on things. So there are a few people that use it, you know, in the way that I'd like this group to continue being used. Just as a forum for us to chat to each other and share our experiences. Yeah. Any other comments and questions? There.
It does look like there have been a couple of comments in the group chat. One from Kelly Stout. I don't know, Sawsan, if you can see that.
Let's see. I took off.
I can read it aloud. If that would be helpful.
Yeah. I'm happy to. To many of us whose jobs are not 100% team science, having one place to find and share everything is going to be the most reasonable for us to keep up with. So I use Team Science Toolkit as my go-to. Yeah, I completely agree. It's a good idea to have one place to keep up with other sites, social media conversations. Yeah, the thing with social media conversations is that when you are sitting down to actually design your own team science curriculum and deliver it to your own people, you are going to look around for someone to discuss something with. And these forums are very important for, you know, what do you think about this? Or has anybody done that? Or, you know, I've got a room full of, you know, people I've from a discipline I've never even heard of before. What do I do? You know, that is what these types of forums are useful for. So yeah, I completely get that nobody has the time to read everything, but it suddenly comes to the forefront when you're trying to do it and you don't know where to go for help. So we're trying to capture everybody in this. I do understand that participating on multiple sites might be more appropriate for those who do team science all the time. I don't know that anybody does team science all the time. We're all wearing it as another hat, as far as I can tell. Karen, I completely agree, and it would be great if the social media links were also included in this one place, so those who are interested. This is Katie Campbell. So hello, Katie. I've been calling you Karen, and I'm sorry.
Oh, you're good. How are you?
I'm well. So, Katie, would you like to tell people who you are and our brief conversation about a website?
Oh, absolutely. So my name is Katie Campbell. I'm the Director of Research, Education, and Development at Nationwide Children's Hospital in Columbus, Ohio. And I teach a series of team science workshops, attended a few of the team science conferences, and reached out to Sawsan about her kind of interest in providing a resource for all team science educators. Like I really, really admire her dedication and her desire to provide this resource to everybody across the country and to consolidate in one spot everything everybody is doing, having also, and across the globe. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's fabulous. So I reached out to her and sort of tried to see if she'd be willing to be interested in collaborating on a website where we could link all these different resources. And so that's something that we're currently working out right now as far as who's going to host that, how do we get content. So hopefully we'll have some updates on that soon.
Absolutely. But to go back to Kelly's comment that it'll be just one more site for Kelly. So maybe we can do both. Maybe we can always link from the toolkit to the team science training website and vice versa. I mean, these things can all cross-post to each other anyway. And that'll ensure that there's always one place to go where everything is available. And it does make sense that the team science toolkit has either the content or the link to the content. My worry with the Team Science Toolkit is, in terms of the globe, it's layered within the NCI, which is layered within the NIH. You know, there's lots of layers in there, and if somebody in, you know, not necessarily Europe, I mean, the Europeans, I guess, are more used to it, but in order for us to really capture everybody, we need it to be one click. And so if we have a Team Science training website type thing, and then it's linked from the toolkit, and it's linked from the I2 Insights, and it's linked from everywhere else, that you know, that might be, you know, if you like, more easily accessible for other people across the globe, rather than just in the US. I hope that makes sense. Great. Now, this is terrific feedback. Thank you all very much. Any other questions?
I know we're over time, and I've been talking a lot, but Sawsan, I wanted to get do you have any examples? You talked about the whole senior faculty versus junior faculty idea, and that's definitely something that's crossed my mind as being part of a center, having a director who may dismiss some of the stuff as like mumbo jumbo or whatever. So could you kind of expand on, you know, your efforts to educate younger faculty members, how that's worked out for you? I don't know.
So I was very lucky at the University of Miami, and the Vice Provost for Research allowed me to include a 2-hour workshop on effective collaboration in their new faculty orientation program. So this was sitting ducks of, you know, orientation program, new faculty, and it was a 2-hour effective collaboration workshop with them. Now, the sad reality is that so much time was taken up by explaining what all the resources around the university were, that we didn't get a great deal of people staying on after lunch for that workshop. We did get some, and it was great, but I would have liked more. And we learned that perhaps we should do the effective collaboration. We should start it before lunch and then have them discuss something over lunch so that they stay. It was basically keeping them there, rather than after lunch everybody's running off to do the million other things that they all have to do. So, but that was, you know, I mean, it's you learn as you go along, right? And in a way, I left in 2016 before being able to complete that package. But that's what I learned. I learned that it was a wonderful opportunity from the Vice Provost of Research to allow me to do this. And as I say, we didn't call it Team Science; we called it effective collaboration. As a 2-hour workshop for new faculty coming in. Mm-hmm. But to capture more of them, we should have structured it differently.
Okay. Interesting.
The other way of doing it was the CTSA ran a boot camp every year, and I had, again, a 1.5 hour slot to talk about Team Science. There was 100 people or so in the room, so it was less workshoppy and more didactic, which is not preferable, but you can't really workshop a room of 100 people that easily. But having said that, invariably people would come up to me after the talk I would give about Team Science and say, that was very useful, the Team Science Toolkit will definitely go on there and see what they've got. You know, there was a lot of positive feedback about wanting more.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I think once, yeah, you just kind of have to break through that first layer almost and crack it open, and then people start saying, oh yeah, this has been a problem. I didn't really realize that this was an issue. And I really wish my team had done this, assess the collaborative potential piece. I mean, all the other pieces go with it, of course, but I mean, when you talk about that, I'm like, we should have done this. I mean, I wasn't involved in it before the funding started, so that was part of the issue. But I mean, I think we could have headed off a lot of issues from the start if that had been sort of a part of the proposal process. Yeah. But I think in the proposal, with some of these centers, especially in the US, there's this whole drive to getting the proposal. In fact, they bring in consultants to get the proposal. Like they're just focused on like, yes, what do you have to sell and what are you going to, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, you've got the money. and then you never really thought, I mean, you thought about what it would look like to just present it and others, and you've given minimal thought to what it actually takes to collaborate. And it bothers me.
Yes.
No,
I know
nobody thought
exactly.
about that. Nobody thought about that until the money showed up on the door.
So you know, it's very, very interesting that you say that, because the SciTS community has been publishing about collaboration readiness for a few years now.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you go, I mean, I don't know if it's on PubMed, it probably is, but they do talk about it. And the problem, part of the problem for me, I mean, I showed here the different platforms available. You know, joining something like the Mendeley Science of Team Science community is great, but again, you have to join it. You have to. It's, you know, as Kelly says, it's one more thing to always be checking for.
It's platform fatigue. I mean,
right.
Yeah.
I think so. But one of the most effective things that I continue to find very useful is the Team Science, the SciTS listserv.
Mm-hmm.
The normal SciTS listserv, a lot of information gets discussed on there, and yes, I delete a lot of it, but some of it I file because it really is very useful. And the I2 Insights, these two I have found to be entirely useful for these types of discussions.
Nice.
And to keep it, you know, to keep it alive, to keep all these questions alive. Mm-hmm. in people's minds.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else? We are over time, but this is cool.
Well, Sawsan, this is Amanda, and I just want to thank you again for sharing this excellent information and getting this conversation, or continuing this conversation going, because obviously there is definitely a need, a gap that needs filling, and I appreciate everything you're doing to try to fill it. If there are no other questions, I think we may wrap things up.
Yeah.
Last call.
Well, I'm on email.
Excellent. And LinkedIn and,
yeah,
and maybe Facebook soon. I just want to give a quick plug for our next webinar, which we are setting up for November 30th at